Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, or welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Donna Mitchell, Pivoting to Web3 podcast, and I am glad to be with you today. And this is going to be a little bit different. There's been some questions on who I am, where I've come from, and how did I get motivated to doing Pivoting to Web3 podcast. I'm going to share a little information with you, and I guess we can call this a special edition, just a little insight. At the end of the day, I ended up in this space because of my past. I had retired and been hanging around this earth around 7 decades or pushing into 7 decades. My background has been in the corporate arena for about 40 years. But as I started looking around and poking around and wanting to do something different, make another change, I decided to expand my network and see different people and be around different opportunities and businesses and endeavors and vision and different conversations. And with that said, I met some very intriguing people. And some of those intriguing people had different conversations, knew different information, and it elevated me to a different point in life where I really had to look at myself, my business, my organization, and think about making another change in retirement, coming out of retirement. But what is the anatomy of a pivot? That's how I got here. Really working on myself, looking for something different, having a business that wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be, and it wasn't going to get there at the place that it was. So, as I started expanding and changing my environment and people around me, like they say, your network is your net worth. And that is very true. I met an individual that shared with me digital art. I had never heard of NFTs, had no idea what it was, but I pursued it. I went to the class and the training, and wow, I had a great time. I still had an eye of design. I am a photographer, so that helped. But at the end of the day, it opened up a whole new world. I learned what an NFT was, what Web3 was, because NFT was part of the Web3 space. One step led to another. That's basically what it took. One step, a change in thought, a change in an idea, just a change in thinking of what could be, even if you're not sure what you're looking for. Just having a hope that there's something else out there that you don't know that you can share, grow, or just learn. Once we learn, knowledge is power, and power is with the people, which leads me to the other reason how I got to pivoting to Web3 podcasts. As I kept learning from the NFT point digital art and meeting different people, I found that there was a whole nother internet on its way in here with AI, artificial intelligence. It was really just starting to knock at the door at the beginning of the year, late last year, at least in my world. And learning that piece about prompting, how to use it, what to say, what not to say, or how to utilize it, it was very, very helpful. With AI being so helpful and the information it would provide, it was like a Google on steroids. I mean, it was a virtual assistant, and it was better than a virtual assistant. I didn't have to pay as much money. I could ask it questions. It would give me details. In seconds, I was amazed. So at the end of the day, as I started learning, growing, advancing in the Web3 space, seeking additional education, different confirmations, consulting, and just moving forward in my life, I thought it was time for a podcast. My advisors had kept mentioning podcasts, how one to many was pretty much where I do very well and excel. But at the end of the day, talking one to many meant I could contribute at a whole nother level. Once again, it was another change. So that's really how I got here. Change, one step at a time, changing your thoughts. And I've always been a learner. Learning is one of the main keys I would have to say is part of my Strength Finder 2.0 top 5. So, with that said, that gives you a little bit more insight about me. So, let's talk about you. Let's talk about the podcast. What's the anatomy of a pivot? How do we make a change, the transition? What does that take? Well, it's really going to take a look at your products, your services, your decisions in the direction of your company or yourself. What do you want to do? What's your mission? If it's personal, what's your purpose? How do you want to go about moving to the next step? There's been a lot of organizations, quite a few if you think about it, that started up in one arena and ended up in another. They may have developed one product, but it didn't work. It just didn't seem to take off and gain traction. So, how did they move forward? Did their development team just throw it to the side? Or did they tweak it and change it and adjust, monitor, and control? What actually took place? A lot of dynamics take place when you want to pivot. But the first and most important thing is awareness, knowing that it's necessary to make a change, to move forward with technology, ideas, and continue learning. So, in the anatomy of a pivot, you may want to look at some of the products that you're offering. If you're offering any tangible products, or is your product really an intangible? What's an intangible? It could be a seat on an airline. You really don't touch it until you get there. The product's already sold. Just a different way of looking at things. I want to make sure that you understand what I'm saying during this podcast so you can really reflect and look at what you're doing in the marketplace. How are you selling, promoting, marketing your product? If we're pivoting to Web3, how do we know what to pivot from or what to pivot to? At the end of the day, what is the direction of your company? Where have you been? Where are you now? Where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? Do you want to be able to compete? Or do you like being part of the solid foundation of the community where nothing really changes? They're going to need me no matter what. I don't have to change. But if you have that posture, think about that. A lot of organizations and people that haven't changed are extinct. They've gone out of business. They've been left behind. So you may want to reconsider or look at the direction of your products, your services, and what's your mission? What's your vision? Where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? Who do you want to be? How do you want to participate, contribute? This can be a personal issue, a personal change, a personal growth and development, self-development. What do you want to look at next? It could be an organization that needs a culture change. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to have efficiency with time. You want to always provide value to yourself, the public, your client, and you always want the best in quality. So you're always going to want the best, as I mentioned, in quality. So as you're looking at the marketplace, one of the biggest key, how can I say it, indicators is going to be technology. How is the technology advancing? How is it changing? Do you need to embrace it, wait, learn, utilize it? How do you embrace it and bring it into your organization or your personal arena? Is it nonprofit? Is it something that you need to commercialize? But where are you going with it? But you can't ignore it because right now, social media, technology is everywhere and it's not going to slow down. If anything, it's picking up speed. So you really want to be able to look at what are the pressures in the marketplace. Right now, it's content for everybody, lead generation for everybody. Where do you want to go with that? So make that one of your considerations for the pivoting opportunities as you transition. Direction, we talked about, that's also going to be your target marketing, your positioning overall for your strategy as you do your strategy planning. You want to look at the direction and alignment. Do you want a partnership? Do you need alliances? Do you want any type of joint ventures? Are you going to be an individual entity? What direction do you want to take? Who do you want to be as a person or as an organization, as an entity? What's going to be included with that? I hope some of this is really helpful because at the end of the day, until you know that, you really don't really have an idea of what your next steps are going to be and how you're going to get there. Is it something that's needed in the marketplace? Do you see an opportunity or a path? What is the vision? So, first, you want to think about this, like I said, and recognize that there's a need for a change because you can't keep doing things the same way all the time and not make any changes and expect a different outcome. We already know that just doesn't make any sense. So, for your future next steps, what influences are going to take place? Now, when I say influences, you also need to look at what's internal. What's taking place internally within yourself, within the organization? Like I said, we're talking personal, if necessary, and that's where you are. Or are you looking at your organization, your business as an entrepreneur? Is there a specific brand? What type of feedback are you getting from your clients? What are your sales doing? Are they declining? Are they stable? Are they going up, maintaining, or not at all? Do you have existing customers that you need to cater to, or do you need to reach for new? Or how do you balance them both? What are the logistical changes that might need to take place? Potential benefits, accessing new markets, staying relevant, improved financial performance. Those are some of the risk mitigations that you might want to look at. But all of this is all part of pivoting to the change, pivoting to Web3, pivoting for any change, any new outcome with any new direction, and you need to do things differently, or you want to do new things, or you're trying to analyze what do I do? The most important thing is to first recognize that there needs to be a pivot or a change. So let me give you some examples on what you may have remembered or seen in the marketplace. You have some software companies, as you know, back in the day, they were all boxed and they had different versions come out. And then all of a sudden, you had to pay a subscription. You had to deal with the cloud. That's an advancement. That's a change in technology. That was a serious pivot. Those that didn't pivot, didn't get with the program, they were left behind. What about those companies that had DVDs? They had to change their business model or do a pivot to live streaming, online streaming, anything but the DVD. That wasn't working anymore. Technology had advanced, things had moved on. Giants that used to be in communications, telecommunications, they had to pivot and reshape the industry by looking at the advancement of what's taking place. And those that didn't move forward, what did you see? They are extinct. There's some of those stores not available today because they didn't pivot, they didn't change, they didn't transition. So when pivoting, there are some things I want you to be aware of and keep in mind. If you have employees, there's going to be people who don't want to change, they don't want to pivot, they don't want to do anything different than what they're doing. They're going to resist the entire way. You're going to have others that are going to sit on the fence. They're not going to care what happens. They're just not going to make a decision. They want to see what's going to happen first, who's going to do what when, what's going to happen. And then you're going to have a smaller group of people that's going to say, yeah, let's go. I'm ready to roll. Work with them. Okay, the rest will come along. Just work with the ones that are the change agents. They're not afraid of change. There's no fear. They're up for it. Let's do it. That's who you work with. You still have the others, but I recommend roll with your change agents. They're going to help you make it happen. Now, with that said, there's also things you got to be concerned about beyond your employees. What about your external? We talked about internal here and there, but what about the external? Your clients, your customers. Who's going to resist? Who's going to complain? How are you going to overcome the conversation? How are you going to diffuse the irate or someone upset that's really upset with the fact that things aren't what they are or what they used to be or what they're used to or what they had in their perception? That's going to be something that you also want to try to minimize the risk. You still want to keep all the feathers smooth. You still want to make sure everybody is happy as they can be. But at the end of the day, you need to make a move and you need to make a change and transition. But remember, when transitioning, you're going to want to look at your time, your quality, and your value. I think as I go back in my life As long as I was looking at time, the quality, and the value, I was okay, even for myself, my business, or if I was working for a major corporation. So, with that said, where do you really want to go from here? What is most important to you for you to be successful? How do you want to get there? And what tools do you want to utilize? These are all things that you want to be able to discuss with your teams, your leadership. And if you're about to make a move from retirement or go back to school, get certifications, get another degree, you can do it, especially with the technology today. It's something I would definitely consider. I'm not talking about anything I haven't done. Everything right now, pushing into them 7 decades. I'm out here doing this podcast, recently got a certification, but I had to look at myself and say, what else do I want to accomplish? And do I want to continue doing this right now? So for now, before we go, let's look at something we all can relate to. I utilized this model recently at a conference, and I decided to use the nonprofit sector. How do they look at pivoting to Web3 as a nonprofit? Well, as a nonprofit, you're going to want to look at your opportunities, your threats, and your strengths and your weaknesses. Or, as people say, SWOT: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. What's your strategy? What do you have in place? What are the current issues? Whether it's with technology, governance, strategies, um, silos, a culture change, health records, inconsistencies. What do you want to look at? Supply chain management, improvement in efficiencies. Where do you want to go with that? When you look at your best practices, maybe not just even a nonprofit, but all the work that's been done over the decades, a lot of best practices have taken place, a lot of efficiencies have improved. Just because we pivot to Web3 doesn't mean they go out the window. You're just looking at the elements of Web3 and the technologies a little bit differently than you would have before. You're going to transition those legacy systems over to your Web3. You're still just going to improve upon what you did with your past, your efficiencies as you transfer value. How are you going to move your products, services, or improve in your efficiencies, your operations, or deliver improved outcomes, or know where your product's at from a supply chain standpoint? A lot of these factors still continue, but you align your strategies in the Web3 world and your technologies in that environment and your legacy systems. You still look at where you want to go, how you want to get there, what efficiencies can you improve with blockchain? What can you improve with it being immutable? Trust, verify. What do you want to utilize in regards to smart contracts? We talked about DAOs. We talked about different pieces of this in the first 9 episodes. And that's when you start learning the pieces and developing and looking at what you're doing in your life, your mortgages, your passive income streams, when you want to use an NFT, your smart contracts, and how do you want to transfer the value? How do you want to deliver the value directly to another individual? That's basically what this is about. How do you help the unbanked? You've heard me mention that before. That was a big concern for me for why I thought everybody really needed to know that Web3 was coming. I didn't know a thing about Intel back in the 80s or the 70s or whenever that shift happened. I didn't make any money. I didn't know it was coming. I didn't know what to do. I just know it was here and I had to roll with it. I think it's a little bit different right now that I was in retirement. I learned something that was fabulous. I think knowledge is power. The people need to have the power. The public needs to know what's going on. And here we are. Because if we understand what's happening, those companies and brands that are really investing in blockchain, they're investing in improving supply chain and knowing the products, or making sure that they keep all the bad actors out or all the fake products out or things that are not correct, and try to improve the efficiencies and the systems and the processes. If the big box stores don't comply or don't really buy in, it's only because we as the public haven't pressured them to buy in, to support the suppliers or the shippers that are trying to do the right thing and get everything moving for our benefit. I think there is a lot of social impact that can take place in a positive manner if we utilize the Web3 technologies and everything that is advanced in our best interest for human mankind. I just think there's a place for us and the technology to improve quality of life for the underprivileged, the underserved, and for so many mass populations overall. We can have social impact like we've never seen before. So we're almost out of time, and I want to make sure with the first 10 episodes and today's special edition, let's say, that you really get what's happening. The internet is changing. The internet, which used to be Internet 1, remember, used to just read. We had old dial-up, IP protocols. Then you had read and write. That's Web 2. Read and write. You got all the organizations and companies out there. You know what read and write is. Social media is right in front of us. And now you're coming into Web 3 with blockchain technology. That's a new foundational technology. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of positives for us. And we'll get a little bit more into blockchain and the technology and different things. But first, let's just thinking about making a change. Let's do a pivot. Let's think about a pivot. And if that pivot to Web3 isn't where you're at right now, you'll get there. But if you're also thinking about pivoting and doing some other things in your personal life, I'm sure that you'll achieve and be successful. And if you're an entrepreneur, let's look at where you are, how you want to get there. Don't get left behind. If you're a brand, you can still maintain the brand, but you just can't get the NFT and do some things the old way. You have to bring in some of the dynamics of the Web3 environment. And as you go forward with the nonprofits, this is really a big one for nonprofit organizations. I love nonprofits. That's why I spend most of my volunteer time. Supply chain management, efficiencies from donor to the person that needs the help, the support, any supplies. Donorship is the way to go with Web3 to improve the trust and make sure everything the donor gives gets to the intended, needed organization, person, population, or what's happening in the world today, making sure they get their trust verified. So confidence goes up, everyone's successful, everyone's still giving and shaping tomorrow together. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this edition and you got to learn a little bit more about me, and I've shared a little bit more about some of my experiences and how I can help you through the podcast and my experiences move to the next step. With that said, thank you for checking out Pivoting to Web3 podcast. Be sure you subscribe, download, and I look forward to serving you again. Have a great day, afternoon, or evening. Take care. Thanks for listening to Pivoting to Web3. At pivotingtoweb3.com, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that it gets to you with every episode that comes out. We have lots of great opportunities, limitations, and downward spirals being revealed by our guests. And thank you in advance for all your reviews and comments. I appreciate you so much. I look forward to serving you in the next week's episode.